Midnight will be the biggest expansion ever. Old WoW is back. What is he talking about? I know we're going to get some revamps of some open world content, old world content, a bunch of stuff coming, plus the new stories and everything else. Let's see what Doran, the teller of 1,000 truths, has to say about why Midnight is going to be WoW's biggest expansion ever.
Midnight is literally going to be the craziest WoW expansion we had ever gotten in all of WoW's
That's right,
history.
Rob.
Despite us being attacked every 2 years, the Void Lord invasion and the Awakening of Azeroth is literally the biggest danger Azeroth has ever been. We're talking like
Rutari.
we are going to
Thank you for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge.
witness the first ordering of Azeroth type danger. We will see literal Void Lords, the Light Army, the final battle of these two forces that have been battling each other since the universe was born. We will see a massive revamp of old Azeroth, Amani Trolls, Elven Unions, possible
Canadian brand,
Jesus
Canadian
Christ.
Mage Tower Bald.
Yeah, you done? You get that out of your fucking system? Okay.
faction war, the literal return of the Titans by the end. Best of all, even crazier things have been going on behind the scenes in terms of the devs, and based on recent interviews, it's almost certain that Midnight and the Last Titan are really picking up where the story left off back in Legion. The swords, Sargeras, Illidan, and everything.
That's what's exciting about it, is we're picking up on the story again.
About this massive upcoming WoW expansion that will be announced in less than 6 months. So while big updates are coming, I've just...
That's right. I think people forget. We're going to get announcements for that this year, man. This year, we're going to fucking find out more about Midnight, which is exciting.
And a second channel for Raid where I've released over a dozen videos, and I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out because a huge update is currently going on.
Cheers, bud. Always watch your viz. Never caught you on stream as I work, but off of work at the moment. Nice. Welcome in, man. Thank you for the follow.
Or the QR code on the screen. The new update is still going strong with 5 brand new legendaries from the coolest stories like the Queen of Hearts, Mad Hatter, Cheshire Cat, and Alice that you can get for free by logging in for 7 days. I've geared her up entirely, she is now one of my main characters, and you can check out my review on why you should pick her. So if you're finally looking to start Raid, check out my link in the description, you will get an amazing head start, and I've also got a bunch of guides so you can avoid the same mistakes that I made, and you'll be able to advance much quicker from campaigns to dungeons to clan and arenas.
Yeah,
so
do it, play it. I don't know, it's another fucking mobile game or something.
Where it gets really fun. I'm a mid-game player myself, I've also recently opened a clan, so I need all the support that I can get, and best of all, Raid is cross-platform, so you can...
What is Raid? You guys ever heard of Raid Shadowland? Never heard of this one.
Or just scan the QR code on the screen, and you will get the legendary hero Alice and 2 epic champions for free. Only with my link. You'll get Tagore on sign up, Ugo at level 15, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. Plus, you can use the promo code Monkey King to get another free legendary. So check out my link and also check out my second channel, Doran's Arena. So let's be realistic. So far, The War Within is a good expansion. I mean, it's the first time in the past 5 years or so that people are actually feeling very optimistic about World of Warcraft, about Blizzard, and are excited for the future. But
yeah, the optimism's waned a little bit, I feel like, through the last couple patches. Hopefully 11.1 brings some of that optimism back. I do feel like people are a bit tired. You know, they're like, oh, same content, different skin. We just talked about all that. But hopefully the motivation continues. I do feel like Midnight... is going to be like a big kickoff expansion. Obviously, it's the first full Metzen expansion we're going to get to, so that's exciting in terms of story, at least.
The War Within is really not all that out of the box, not all that crazy. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some really exciting brand new storylines in the works, but just think about it logically. I mean, almost everything people are excited about for this World Soul Saga is what will happen by the end of this expansion and Midnight and the Last Titan. Very few people are going absolutely crazy about the Goblins, Undermine, Dwarves, or Khazar itself, or the Haranir. What people are really interested in are the upcoming Void Invasion, Zealotat, Void Lords. They're excited about the Titan involvement and enslavement of Azeroth, what is really going on with Azeroth. They're interested in Beledar, what it is. They're interested in the Old Gods, the return to revamped Quel'Thalas and revamped Northrend. Most of the exciting lore is starting with the end of The War Within and the start of Midnight, and this is where things are really going to start getting good. Of course, this is only natural because we are getting into the World Soul Saga, which is a trilogy, and in most cases. I mean, by definition, in a trilogy, the first part is the prelude that sets everything up. However,
Sure.
in the case of this expansion and the World Soul Saga,
I mean, yeah, you got a trilogy, right? This is the Fellowship of the Ring, starting out, and then we're really going to get into some big war events. Supposedly, we're taking a big L in Midnight, so that's going to be exciting. Which means if we're taking a big L, that means we're going to get into some big battles. So that's going to be pretty cool. And like I said before, in terms of lore, I definitely think Midnight is going to be peak lore.
A few more things at stake here behind the curtain that a lot of people don't know. Recently, we got an interview from a former Blizzard CEO that gave us a huge insight into what happened behind the scenes post-Legion and why WoW
He's talking about Bobby Kotick and he's showing Gallywix. That's fucking great.
really started going downhill. Now, don't get me wrong, no one is saying this guy's a good guy now, but it did confirm a few things we already believed. So, as you may be aware, Chris Metzen is one of the original masterminds of Warcraft itself as a franchise. He started working on it back in the 90s, he even did some of the early artwork. He really created it from the foundation. He is one of the main guys responsible for most of our success, and while he did misstep a bit around Worlds of Draenor, he did bring the magic back in Legion. However,
I will say though, WoD's story, time travel, different, alternate universe. I never really liked that shit that much. But the story wasn't what killed WoD. It was the lack of content. WoD had good raids and some cool stuff, and I love the intros to the orc tribes and how we learned about them and everything. You remember those I forgot what they were called, the war clan things that we got before the expansion even went live about all the different clans. That stuff was really cool. And the opening campaign for WoD was great. It was just, it died off. There was nothing to do. And garrisons were just a big mistake because it just divided up you felt like you were playing by yourself. Just grabbing some lotion in the middle of Talador and just rubbing one out. That's what it felt like you were doing every time you logged in because there's nobody around.
Worlds of Draenor, he did bring
Maybe I went too far with that, but yeah,
sure. However, here are a few things that happened that were just revealed. First,
Just
there was
saying.
some big drama around the Warcraft movie, some disagreement, that Chris Metzen didn't like the direction where WoW was going after Legion. He obviously had something different in mind post the entire Sargeras thing other than BFA and the Shadowlands. He knew this storyline wouldn't do well and he left despite the CEO begging him to come back. Once again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying BFA was as bad as the Shadowlands. The expansion performed much better. However, I'm talking about the storyline here. It's undeniable that BFA and Shadowlands were like the initial World Soul Saga, just with 2 parts instead of 3. Literally the entire storyline of BFA was supposed to set up the culmination in the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands was supposed to be a really big deal. So with Shadowlands failing, the entire story
Oh, that fucking tripped out there for a second. Who the fuck is Sam's bald spot in my chat? I mean, my God, who is this person? You fucking made this Twitch account just to come in here and troll my ass. You could rub some lotion on me, please. My God. My God, and I do rub lotion on you. Okay, so cut that shit out.
Really ridiculous. I mean, the whole faction war was orchestrated by the Zowal guy. Literally everything that happened in BFA was created by the jailer. Something obviously happened here. I mean, Chris Metzen wrapped up the storyline in Legion. He planted a sword in that by now iconic cinematic, and he obviously planned to do something with this storyline next. However, it does appear that things happened that completely derailed his plans. He left, and then the story went in a completely different direction. Now, Chris Metzen...
whatever happened with these amazing cinematics, man? The BFA storytelling cinematics. You guys remember when, Blizzard said, oh, they created a new engine for rendering cinematics, and we're going to get a lot more, cinematic storytelling in the game? And BFA storytelling, whatever you want to say about BFA, which I actually look back on decently fun. I think they messed up with some, the Azerite armor and shit. That was all fucked up, but the story and everything else was pretty good. The telling of the story in BFA, damn, it was amazing. And I thought we were just going to keep getting cinematics like this, and that never happened again. I wonder if it just, I don't know, probably time investment versus money on return. They just said, fuck it. That's how companies think these days. But I kind of wish we got more stuff like that. On the bald spot, for the lotion, I don't know. I use shampoo with lotion in it, okay?
In the return during Dragonfight, it
the
is
fuck
now
is that?
so
What does it
obvious
matter?
that this World Soul Saga
Talk about
was
fucking
what
Midnight.
was supposed to come all the way
Jesus
back in
Christ.
2018 after Legion. This is the missing WoW storyline. However, keep things in mind, I can almost guarantee that Chris Madsen didn't have too much to do with the War Within, and he might have only impacted like half of the development at most, but his true projects are Midnight and The Last Titan.
Yeah.
Remember Blizzard timelines, I mean, back when they announced the saga, they already told us a team is
Way
already
to tie it
working
in,
on The Last
Konisi.
Titan, so it's likely that the War Within was being worked on even back in the Shadowlands. Remember, the Blizzard team talking about a new saga coming around the Shadowlands finale, they already had the War Within plan, no doubt. They also tested these
Right here, butthole in the sky, just saying. I've watched the cinematic many times, and every time I see it and it's closing up like this, it's a butthole in the sky. That's what Shadowlands was. It was the butthole of all expansions.
features in the Zaralak Caverns and Dragonflight
Perfect
for
pause.
the War Within, so I'm almost certain half of the expansion was already finished by the time Chris Madsen organized things. My point here is that we should really be excited for Midnight. By all the current hints, roadmaps, and interviews, Midnight is going to be the expansion where the old WoW starts again. You can see this dissonance in the War Within. I mean, we're talking about the Sword of Sargeras, which is all about the saga. Chris Madsen is talking about how
There are
this is
kids
the
on
last
stream,
time
I hope
to think, yet it is the opening of the War Within. It really seemed like they just did this retroactively, which is why we're going from Kazakar to Quel'Thalas to Northrend, just jumping around. It really seems like the War Within was originally supposed to be yet another newly discovered island expansion like Dragonflight, but then Chris Madsen returned and decided to tie it in back into his original old plan for WoW. As I said, expect WoW Midnight and The Last Titan to literally be like a sequel to Legion. By pretty much all of the hints we had gotten so far, right now Blizzard is heavily ignoring most of the post-Legion storyline. They're even trying to sort of retcon some Shadowlands lore with some quests and books by kinda muddying the waters, saying, yeah, that lore you might have heard back in the day, that was just biased, it might not all be true, so they can't really outright retcon it, but they're just trying to say maybe this is not the case. However, the real question is, why should we be excited for Midnight? Is this yet another YouTube video talking about how an expansion is going to be amazing before it's even announced? Well, I would say let's just look at the evidence that we currently have. Midnight is going to be an expansion unlike any we had previously gotten on Azeroth objectively. First of all, the expansion is going to be a revamp-based expansion, returning to, as Chris Madsen said,
that stuff is exciting, and that we are kind of getting a revamp of old zones, and we all know the real part of WoW, the best part of WoW is the old zones. So yeah, bring in some revamps. Silvermoon getting fully rebuilt, that's going to be exciting to see. I've always thought that that city deserved more attention. Hopefully they make it a hub city so we actually get to see the rebuild and see it, and spend time in it. That's what I'm hoping with the whole elf expansion. Silvermoon becomes a hub city for both the Horde and the Alliance. That'd be awesome. But besides that, we're getting a ton of reworks to Northrend eventually in The Last Titan. So yeah, going back to those old zones by in and of itself is going to be exciting.
as to the old world, which is something that people have heavily requested. Now, you might say, this isn't all that revolutionary. I mean, we did get Cataclysm that brought us back to the old world, revamped the entire planet. There was a much bigger revamp than Midnight, and you're right. I mean, this is kind of in that old expansion spirit. However, in terms of the actual storyline, this is legit going to be the craziest time ever on Azeroth, like literally in all of Azeroth's history. I know, once again, you could say, how is that really the case? I mean, Azeroth is invaded every 2 years. First the orcs, the undead, the demons, Deathwing, faction wars, crazy dead guys. Yeah, all of that is true. Out of all of these, the biggest threat to ever out of them has been the Burning Legion. However, this new threat is objectively a much bigger threat than any we had previously faced. Chris Madsen told us that Xal'atath is a long-term villain. She isn't here to be a patch boss. She will very likely be around until The Last Titan, or at least the end of Midnight. She also isn't a big bad villain. She's only, as far as we know her, the Harbinger that is bringing the real villain to Azeroth. Midnight...
Yeah, but more of a Xal'atath's story is going to be good to hear, for sure. We still don't know what she was at the end of the day. Is she just the Silver Surfer Harbinger of the bad guy to come who's going to eat a planet? I mean, Blizzard has taken hints from Marvel before, but I don't know if they're going full Silver Surfer story here. Or is she, was she, if they did go full Silver Surfer story, it'd basically be that she maybe was an ethereal in the past. That would kind of, blend in with that same story, because his planet, right, to save it, he had to go on and do his shit and bring about, what's the bad guy in Marvel that Silver Surfer basically is the Harbinger for? Either way, we're going to find out a lot more about her in the coming days. and expansions.
Also appears to be the first expansion that starts where we actually lose. We're getting a full-on Void invasion that literally never happened in Azeroth's past. In terms of Legion invasions, I mean, these were happening constantly. We already had a massive one in the past, but the Void, in this manner, had never previously invaded Azeroth, and this opponent is unlike any we had ever faced. Almost certainly, we are literally going to see the Void Lords themselves for the first time ever in this game, and so far we only knew of 2 of them that are named Dimensius and Invalidus. Then we were told that the Light Army will come and this will be the final battle between the Light and the Void. I mean, just think about how crazy this actually is. I mean, the Light and the Void had been battling each other since the universe was born, and this ultimate battle is going to happen now, here, and we are going to witness it. It's almost as if we're witnessing the ordering of Azeroth by the Titans when it happened back in ancient history. Even crazier than that, we are literally going to witness something akin to that, as we were told in Midnight, things will spiral wildly out of control and the Titans return,
yeah, we're gonna take an L.
leads us into Northrend. So as I said, completely objectively, the overarching main storyline of Midnight is the craziest that it ever was. It by far overshadows the massive Legion invasion that happened back in Legion. I mean, we're talking about Sergeras and Illidan actually coming to Azeroth, the sword being relevant again.
The team up, maybe?
Like, this is literally going to be like the finale of WoW, and it really begins with Midnight. However, that is just for the overarching storyline, but other things that got planned are insanely interesting as well. We're talking about a massive Elven reunion, which is something that hasn't happened since Kualtalas was destroyed by Arthas back in Warcraft. That was a cool cinematic. We're talking about a brand new Silver Moon, and not just Silver Moon, but new and enlarged Kualtalas. By definition, this is bringing back the Amani Trolls, which have an insanely long and interesting history.
I hope they do bring back the Amani Trolls. I always thought that it was a really cool tribe, didn't get enough love, and if we're going to talk about elves, we should be able to talk about Amani Trolls, because they literally fought in wars, bitter wars against each other for years.
And they're incredibly interesting characters. We're also getting player housing around Orgrimmar and Stormwind prior to Midnight's release, but they did heavily imply that it will expand in this manner later down the line, very likely with new locations. Furthermore, with recent changes to Undercity and Gilneas and the new Arathi storylines in the old Dalaran ruins, we're legit looking at potentially this entire portion of the Eastern Kingdoms being subject to a massive revamp, which could be insanely interesting, as we're talking about potentially revamping former Lordaeron, the lands of Arthas and Theranos, and there is some crazy storyline potential here, especially now with some of the OG writers back writing this game. Furthermore, we can data mine Ethereals, which could imply a whole lot of things, potentially a new playable race. We will very likely get a new race or a class in Midnight. Other than this, you might have missed it, but Blizzard also hinted at faction conflict happening as well, which is nearly impossible to predict at the moment. But think about something going on with Aurelian and the Light Army, and Anduin potentially returning to leading the Alliance once again. We also got the seeds they planted for a brand new Draenei capital, which could be a storyline. And in terms of patch content for Midnight, we could potentially be looking at actually visiting the ancient planet of Koresh, or maybe...
That's what I want, man. This is the golden ticket. I want to revisit Koresh. I want to go back to the ethereal homeworld, or not go back, go there for the first time. But I hope we get some kind of like time variation where we get to go see their world before it was destroyed. Technically, if we got to see that, we would see what the ethereals looked like, because they didn't used to look like this. They look like something else. That would be awesome.
Waste to this realm.
Sisval, thank you for the follow-up to our Scourge. That would be really cool to see, and I hope that we get some quest line or some kind of storytelling that eventually takes us there. Maybe even do some quests there. Just be there for a patch. That'd be cool.
With the involvement of these crazy Arathi humans we had just discovered and their actual mainland empire. Furthermore, Scarlet seemed to be relevant, old Dalaran. Now, best of all, when it comes to...
Man, if they ever rebuild Dalaran, I hope they bring it back to the ground and rebuild it this way. Because the floating Dalaran is really only this inner ring. It's only this. All of this shit from the outskirts here, none of that, we've never seen any of that. Because Dalaran's always just been this little floating rock. I would love to see them bring Dalaran back to the ground if they ever rebuild it, and rebuild it in its full former glory.
Midnight, we're literally getting the expansion announcement in less than 6 months, which is crazy.
Sam just wants a City of Dildo, basically.
Since the War Within was released, which is the fastest we had ever gotten content in WoW in all of its history. So literally, by all the metrics, big times are ahead for WoW, and it starts with Midnight. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on the revamps of Orgrimmar and Stormwind by clicking on the screen, and check out my new raid channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Yeah, I'm excited for this next patch, but mainly I'm excited for the fact that we are getting closer to Midnight, and we're going to get some Midnight announcements coming in the coming months. So that's exciting too. I think really Midnight will be telling for how the rest of this, series is going to go, because it really is the Metzen expansion. It's the full board. Like, they weren't working on this prior to him coming back. They weren't working on this prior to the World Soul Saga, whereas everything else has kind of been a mix match, right? Dragonflight and the War Within to lead up to this point. So we'll see how good it gets, how good the story gets, the gameplay, and everything else. But a nice video here from Doran.